I didn't realize, I grew up and I had never heard of therapy. I didn't even know it was a thing until I ended up going to college and, realized, oh, there's a counselor here. What is that? So I minored in psychology. And then when I was out of school, I was, working, and I wanted to start dating, and I realized I didn't have any relationship skills at all. Everything I learned about dating, I'd learned from movies and TV, and so I realized, okay, maybe I need to really learn how to do this. So then I went to therapy in my 20s, and I met a marriage and family therapist, and that's how I started getting into this and realizing, oh, this is actually really, really interesting. I'm learning a lot, and I want to share this with other people. So that's how I got into it.
So how do you know when you don't have any relationship skills? How do you know?
I mean, so I grew up in a family where, my parents are lovely. They were good parents to me, but I didn't really see them have the best relationship with each other. So coming out of, when I left my family home and went to college, I kind of realized, I don't really have any models of what a healthy relationship looks like. And then, of course, college, seeing a bunch of people, dating and breaking up, and the heartbreak, and, everybody's crying. I was like, this looks terrible. It doesn't look like anyone knows what they're doing. And so I really just kind of stayed out of it. I focused on my school. I was a soccer player. I just found other things to do. But then it was finally in my 20s, I was like, oh, I've never done this, so I really don't know how to do this well at all. So, I wanted to learn.
Yeah, because a lot of people are like that, but at the same time, a lot of people don't seek help. They kind of just keep going and.
And honestly, maybe it's also because I grew up in Japan before I moved to the States. Japan is very efficient. It's all about efficiency. Yeah. And, so in a lot of ways, maybe I came at it from a logical perspective of watching these people fall in love, get their heart broken, and then cry for a couple months and then try it again. I was like, this seems painful and inefficient. There's got to be a better way to do this. It's just throwing yourself out there and hoping it works. Yeah. So I was like, I don't want to do this way. I want to do it efficiently and effectively, and make it make sense. So
yeah. Speaking of Japan, Japan was the first place I went to outside of North America.
Oh wow! How did you like it?
At first, I'm 20 years old. It was difficult because, I'm young. I don't know anything, basically.
It's a totally different culture.
Yeah. And I was in the Navy at the time. Okay. And I went to Yokosuka. Nice. And I didn't know any. It took me like a year to get used to everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I grew up in a small town where everybody know everybody, basically. Or in the next town over, you might know half of the people, and in town on the other side, you might know half of those people. So it was that's how I grew up. And when I went to Japan, it was kind of like, oh my God, Tokyo's huge. There's girls everywhere.
Yeah, overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it was just a lot that I learned a lot, for the 3 years I was over there. And it was I don't think I'll ever forget that experience. Yeah.
Oh, have you ever been back since?
Yeah, I go every 5 years. I go back to visit. I still have friends that live over there.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, Japan is very different. It's very overwhelming. and like you said, part of it is just there's so many people everywhere, especially if you come from a small town. The food is different, everything's different. You drive on the other side, everything's different. But so I kind of experienced that the other way of growing up in Japan. Things are a certain way, and then coming to America, and that's also where I realized, like, oh, I don't know how to do relationships in this country at all. Like you said, so I just kind of stayed out of it. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to kind of stay out of it. Yeah. It looks really painful, and I don't know how to do that.
Yeah,
I don't want to do it.
I think over here is kind of wide open. Over here. Yeah, it's kind of like, and depending on where you live too, a big city or a town or a state, it changes where, it just depends. But if you live in a major city like New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, it's wide open in these cities. So it's kind of like, if you're coming from Japan or really anywhere, really, I mean, it might blow your mind. You're like, oh, why do people act like this?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's also what led me to being a therapist as well, is I was very interested in just like listening and learning from people for a long time of, how do you do this? Why do you do that? And, just that curiosity, because I was really curious. I didn't know. And I think that's kind of translated into being a therapist. Be curious about people. Yeah.
So what made you focus on men's mental health specifically?
Yeah, so I also, this is something that I grew up in a huge family with a lot of sisters. So I heard, and then I went to my college, which was all women. So I was just surrounded by the female perspective all the time, which I love, right? I love, my sisters, my siblings, and, my girlfriends. But I realized in college that I didn't really know a lot about men's perspective. And, in college, so I went to an all-women's college, and one of my best friends was dating a guy on the football team at a different school. And so, I would kind of go back and forth between like this all-women's environment of, this college, and then going over there and hanging out with the football team because that was her boyfriend. And I was like, gosh, these are just so different. These like cultures are totally, just foreign to each other. And so that's where, when I became a therapist, I recognized how female-centric a lot of therapy was. Like in the classrooms, there were lots of women that were becoming counselors. And so that's where I kind of leaned into, well, where are the men's voices? What are the men saying about what they need in therapy and what's important to them? And so I think that's kind of, what I recognize. There are a lot of people talking about the female perspective. I'm interested in what the other side has to say.
Yeah. So what are some things that you found that I guess maybe you weren't aware of about guys